I'm not the one you need. Should I clear the room?
No, tell me this isn't how it ends.
Because I fell in love with you.
You loved me all this time?
Take your own place.
The billionaire froze as the bride walked down the aisle. Everything about her looked perfect. The wedding dress, the veil, the bouquet in her hands. But she wasn't the woman he was supposed to marry. And somehow, nobody else seemed to notice. Not his family, not the guests, not even the cameras broadcasting the wedding to millions of people. Only Ethan Brooks knew something was terribly wrong, because the woman walking toward him wasn't his fiancée. She was the wedding coordinator, and what happened next would become the most shocking day of his life. 3 months before the wedding, Ethan Brooks seemed to have everything. At 35, he was one of the most successful technology billionaires in America. His company was expanding internationally. His face appeared regularly in business magazines. And in a few months, he would be marrying Vanessa Sinclair. To the public, they looked like the perfect couple. Elegant, successful, beautiful. The kind of couple people expected to see on magazine covers. But appearances can be deceiving. The truth was that Ethan and Vanessa's relationship had never been a great love story. They liked each other. They respected each other. Their families got along well. And after several years of dating, marriage simply felt like the next step. At least, that's what Ethan believed. Lately, however, something felt different. Vanessa seemed distant. Whenever they discussed the future, she appeared distracted. Whenever wedding plans came up, she seemed more interested in finishing the conversation than enjoying it. Ethan noticed, but he convinced himself it was only stress. Planning one of the biggest weddings in the country couldn't be easy. What he didn't know was that Vanessa had been keeping a secret. 6 months earlier, she had met another man. His name was Daniel Carter. Unlike Ethan, Daniel wasn't wealthy. He wasn't famous, but Vanessa had fallen deeply in love with him. Instead of ending her engagement, she chose to hide the truth. She attended wedding meetings, posed for photographs, smiled for guests, and all the while she was secretly planning a future with someone else. The wedding preparations continued as scheduled. One afternoon, Ethan arrived at the luxury hotel where part of the wedding planning was taking place. The moment he stepped inside, he noticed organized chaos. Staff members rushed from room to room. Florists carried large arrangements through the lobby. Designers discussed decorations. And in the middle of it all stood a young woman holding a clipboard. She was giving instructions to nearly everyone in the room. Move those flowers closer to the entrance. Check the guest list one more time. And someone please call the photographer. Ethan watched her for a moment. She seemed completely in control, as if nothing could overwhelm her. The woman suddenly turned and nearly walked straight into him. "Oh," she stepped back quickly. "I am so sorry, Mr. Brooks." Ethan smiled slightly. "No damage done." She laughed nervously. "Good, because replacing a billionaire wasn't in my budget." To Ethan's surprise, he laughed. A real laugh. The woman smiled. "Emma Parker," she said, extending her hand. "Lead wedding coordinator." Ethan shook it. "Nice to meet you, Emma." Neither of them realized it then. But that brief conversation would become the beginning of a story neither of them expected. Because while Ethan was preparing to marry one woman, fate was quietly leading him toward another. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Emma crossed paths often. Wedding planning for a billionaire was not a small task. There were guest lists, venue inspections, security meetings, photographers, caterers, and endless last-minute changes. Whenever something went wrong, Emma somehow found a way to fix it. Ethan couldn't help noticing how hard she worked. Unlike most people around him, she never seemed impressed by his wealth. She spoke to him normally. Sometimes she even disagreed with him. And strangely, Ethan found himself looking forward to their conversations. Meanwhile, Vanessa grew more distant. Most of the wedding planning was left to Emma. Vanessa attended only the meetings she absolutely had to attend. Whenever Ethan asked if everything was okay, she always gave the same answer. "I'm just stressed." Ethan believed her. Emma wasn't so sure. One afternoon, she accompanied Vanessa to a private bridal fitting at the hotel. The wedding dress had finally arrived. It was beautiful. After helping Vanessa into the fitting room, Emma stepped outside to give her privacy. A few minutes later, she realized she had forgotten her clipboard inside. She knocked lightly. No answer. Thinking Vanessa was still changing, Emma reached for the door. Then she heard a voice. Vanessa was on the phone, laughing. Emma froze. "I know," Vanessa said. There was a pause. Then she laughed again. "Daniel, I'm not actually going to marry him." Emma's eyes widened. Inside the room, Vanessa continued talking. "Relax. Everything is ready." Another pause. "The car will be waiting behind the church." Emma felt her stomach drop. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "The moment I get the chance, I'm leaving." Vanessa lowered her voice. "By the time anyone notices, we'll already be gone." Emma stood completely still. Her heart pounded. This wasn't cold feet. This wasn't wedding stress. Vanessa was planning to abandon Ethan on his wedding day. And from the sound of it, she had been planning it for a long time. A few moments later, the call ended. Emma quickly stepped away before she could be seen. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. She wanted to tell Ethan. She really did. But what could she say? That she had overheard a private conversation? That his fiancée might run away? Without proof, it would sound unbelievable. So Emma stayed silent. But as she watched Ethan and Vanessa together during the following weeks, one thought refused to leave her mind. If Vanessa really went through with her plan, the man standing at the altar would be completely blindsided. And Emma feared the humiliation would be far worse than anyone imagined. As the wedding day drew closer, Emma found it harder to ignore what she knew. Every time she saw Ethan, she remembered Vanessa's plan. And every time she remembered it, she felt guilty. Ethan had no idea what was coming. One afternoon, they were reviewing the final wedding schedule at the venue. Most of the staff had already left. Only Ethan and Emma remained. Emma was checking details on her tablet when Ethan suddenly asked, "Do you ever take a break?" She looked up. "What?" "You've been working for 3 hours straight." Emma laughed. "That's because your wedding has enough details to organize 3 different countries." Ethan smiled. "Fair point." For a moment, they both laughed. Then silence settled between them. Not an awkward silence, a comfortable one, the kind that surprised both of them. Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Can I ask you something?" Emma nodded. "Why did you become a wedding planner?" She smiled softly. "Because I like happy endings." Ethan chuckled. "That's a dangerous career choice." "Why?" "Half of marriages don't exactly end happily." Emma laughed. "Maybe, but every couple starts with hope." For some reason, that answer stayed with Ethan. Over the next few weeks, their conversations became more frequent. Sometimes they talked about the wedding, sometimes about work, sometimes about life. Emma found herself looking forward to seeing him, and Ethan found himself doing the same. What neither of them realized was that Vanessa had started noticing. One afternoon, she arrived unexpectedly at a wedding planning meeting. The moment she entered the room, she saw Ethan and Emma laughing together. For a second, she froze. Not because she loved Ethan. She didn't. But she couldn't remember the last time she had seen him smile that way around her. Ethan noticed her standing there. "Vanessa, you're early." Immediately, both Ethan and Emma stopped laughing. Vanessa forced a smile. "Looks like I interrupted something." Emma quickly shook her head. "No, we were just discussing the seating chart." Vanessa nodded, but something about the moment bothered her. Not enough to change her plans, not enough to stay, but enough to make her uncomfortable. The rest of the meeting felt strangely tense. Vanessa answered questions with short replies. Emma focused on her notes, and Ethan found himself wondering why his fiancée seemed so distant. When the meeting ended, Vanessa left almost immediately. Outside, she pulled out her phone. A message from Daniel was waiting for her. "When this is over, we'll finally be together." Vanessa stared at the message, then smiled. Whatever doubts she had felt inside that room quickly disappeared. Her mind was already made up. She wasn't marrying Ethan. Meanwhile, Emma watched her leave through the window. A knot formed in her stomach. The closer the wedding came, the more trapped she felt by the secret she carried. She wanted to warn Ethan. She wanted to tell him everything. But without proof, she feared she would only create chaos. So she remained silent, and the countdown to the wedding continued. Day by day, hour by hour, until the morning that would change all of their lives forever. The morning of the wedding arrived. The church was breathtaking. White roses lined the aisle. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Guests filled every seat. Outside, reporters gathered behind security barriers. Inside, excitement buzzed through the air. Everything was ready. Everything except the bride. Backstage, Emma moved quickly between rooms, making sure every detail was perfect. The ceremony was scheduled to begin in 20 minutes. Vanessa should have been in the bridal suite, but when Emma knocked on the door, there was no answer. She frowned. Maybe Vanessa was with her makeup team. 10 minutes later, Emma checked again. Still no answer. A feeling of dread settled in her stomach. She opened the door. The room was empty. At first, she thought Vanessa might have stepped out. Then she noticed something strange. The wedding dress was gone. So was Vanessa's phone charger. And her suitcase. Emma's heart nearly stopped. She immediately called Vanessa. No answer. She called again, straight to voicemail. Panic began rising inside her. The ceremony was less than 15 minutes away. Guests were already seated. Ethan was waiting. Emma quickly searched the nearby rooms. Nothing. She called members of the bridal party. Nobody had seen Vanessa. Then her phone vibrated. A text message. It was from an unknown number. Emma opened it. Her blood ran cold. It was a photo. Vanessa was sitting inside a car beside Daniel. Both of them were smiling. Below the photo was a single message. "I'm sorry, I couldn't do it." Emma stared at the screen. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Vanessa had actually done it. She had run away. The nightmare Emma had feared for weeks was happening. At that exact moment, one of Ethan's relatives approached her. "Emma, the ceremony starts in 10 minutes. Emma forced herself to stay calm. "I know." The woman smiled. "Everything okay?" Emma looked toward the church doors. Thousands of eyes were waiting for a wedding. Millions more would watch online. And standing at the altar was a man who had no idea his bride had just abandoned him. For the first time in her professional career, Emma had absolutely no idea what to do. And with every passing second, disaster moved closer. Emma stood frozen for several seconds. The photo on her phone felt like a nightmare. Vanessa was gone. There was no misunderstanding, no confusion, no last-minute emergency. She had chosen to leave. The church coordinator rushed over. "Emma, we're ready to begin." Emma looked toward the sanctuary doors. The music team was waiting. The guests were waiting. Ethan was waiting. Everything was ready except the one person who mattered most: the bride. For a brief moment, Emma considered telling the truth immediately. But then she imagined what would happen. The whispers, the reporters, the headlines, the billionaire abandoned at the altar, in front of his family, his friends, and millions of viewers. Emma closed her eyes. Then she made a decision. A completely insane decision. 5 minutes later, the bridal suite erupted into confusion. "What do you mean Vanessa is gone?" One bridesmaid stared at Emma in shock. Emma took a deep breath. "We don't have time to explain." The women exchanged nervous glances. "Emma, what are you planning?" Emma looked around the room. Then her eyes landed on a second wedding gown. A backup dress. Earlier that week, the bridal boutique had delivered it after a last-minute alteration issue with Vanessa's original gown. Vanessa had chosen her main dress and never planned to wear the backup. Emma had almost forgotten it was there. Almost. One of the bridesmaids followed her gaze. Her eyes widened. "Emma, no." Emma swallowed. "It's the only thing I can think of." "You can't be serious." "I am." Another bridesmaid stepped forward. "This could destroy your career." "I know. People will think you're trying to steal the groom." Emma shook her head. "I'm not doing this for me." The room fell silent. She looked toward the church. "I'm doing this for him." Nobody spoke. They all knew what would happen if the truth came out right now. One bridesmaid finally whispered, "What happens after you walk down the aisle?" Emma forced a weak smile. "Then I'll tell him the truth." The women stared at her as if she had lost her mind. Maybe she had, but there was no time left. The ceremony was about to begin. A few minutes later, Emma stood before the mirror wearing the backup gown. The veil covered most of her face. Her hands trembled. This was a terrible idea, possibly the worst decision she had ever made. Outside, the wedding music suddenly began. The signal. It was time. Emma's heart pounded so hard she thought she might faint. The church doors slowly opened. Hundreds of guests turned toward the entrance. And taking a deep breath, Emma Parker stepped forward. Toward the altar. Toward Ethan Brooks. Toward the moment that would change both of their lives forever. The music echoed through the church. Every guest rose to their feet. Phones were lifted. Cameras focused on the entrance. And slowly, Emma began walking down the aisle. Every step felt unreal. Her hands trembled beneath the bouquet she carried. The veil hid most of her face. For now. At the altar, Ethan watched her approach. Something felt different. At first, he couldn't explain it. Then he noticed her walk. His brow furrowed. Vanessa usually walked with quick, confident strides. This bride moved differently, more carefully, more nervously. As she came closer, Ethan noticed something else. The color of her hair beneath the veil. Vanessa was blonde. This hair looked darker. His heart skipped a beat. For a moment, He wondered if stress was playing tricks on him. But before he could think further, the ceremony continued. The officiant began speaking. Guests smiled. Family members relaxed. Everything appeared normal, at least from the outside. Inside, Emma felt as if she might collapse. Every second made her more certain she had made a terrible mistake. But it was too late to stop now. The ceremony moved forward. The vows were exchanged. The rings were presented. And still, nobody seemed to realize what was happening. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The unveiling of the bride. The officiant smiled. "You may now lift the veil." The church fell silent. Ethan slowly reached forward. His hands hesitated. Then he lifted the veil. Gasps exploded throughout the room. The silence shattered instantly. "What? That's not Vanessa. Who is she?" People jumped to their feet. Confused voices echoed through the church. Ethan's mother looked completely stunned. Vanessa's parents stared in disbelief. Several guests rushed forward, demanding answers. Emma stood frozen, her face pale. She had imagined this moment 100 times. None of those versions had prepared her for the reality. The entire church seemed to erupt into chaos. Questions came from every direction. What is going on? Where's Vanessa? Who is this woman? For several seconds, nobody could hear anything clearly. Then suddenly, phones across the church began vibrating, one after another. Guests looked down. So did family members. Even Ethan's phone lit up. A new message, sent to everyone. Ethan opened it. The room became quiet again. On the screen was a video. Vanessa, sitting beside Daniel inside a car. She looked directly into the camera. "I'm sorry." Her voice echoed through the silent church. "I know this will hurt people." She took a deep breath. "But I can't marry someone I don't love." The guests stared in shock. Vanessa continued. "I never loved Ethan the way a wife should." Tears filled her eyes. "I tried to convince myself I could do it." She shook her head. "But I can't trade my happiness for money, status, or a perfect wedding." Daniel reached for her hand. She squeezed it. "I'm leaving with the man I truly love." The video ended. Silence filled the church. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The truth had finally arrived. And suddenly, Emma wasn't the center of attention anymore. Vanessa was. Every eye slowly turned toward Ethan, waiting to see how the billionaire groom would react. The silence inside the church felt endless. Nobody knew what to say. Nobody knew what to do. The woman who was supposed to be standing at the altar had run away. And the woman standing there now was the wedding planner. Emma could feel hundreds of eyes staring at her. She wished the floor would open and swallow her whole. Slowly, she turned toward Ethan. His expression was impossible to read. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The words barely left her lips. Then she took a shaky breath. "I know this looks terrible." Nobody interrupted. The church was so quiet that every word echoed. Emma gathered her courage. "Vanessa told me weeks ago that she planned to leave." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emma continued. "I wanted to warn you." She looked down. "But I didn't have proof." Ethan remained silent. "I thought she might change her mind." Her voice trembled. "When I found out she was really gone, it was too late." Emma swallowed hard. There were reporters outside. She looked around the room. There were hundreds of guests here. Then she looked directly at Ethan. "I couldn't bear the thought of you being humiliated in front of the entire world." Tears filled her eyes. "So I made the stupidest decision of my life." A few nervous laughs escaped from the crowd. Even Emma almost laughed. Almost. She shook her head. If you want an annulment, a divorce, or for security to throw me out right now, I'll understand. The room became silent again. Everyone looked toward Ethan, waiting. His mother, his father, the guests, the reporters watching online. Everyone. Ethan stared at Emma for several seconds. Then something unexpected happened. He smiled. A small smile, but a real one. The crowd looked confused. Emma looked confused. Ethan took a slow step toward her, then another. You know something? He said quietly. Emma blinked. What? Ethan laughed softly. I should probably be furious right now. A few people nodded. That seemed reasonable. But strangely, he looked directly into her eyes. I'm not. Emma stared at him, unable to speak. Ethan took another step closer. Do you want to know the first thing I thought when you walked through those doors? Emma shook her head. No. I knew it wasn't Vanessa. The church erupted into shocked murmurs. Emma froze. What? I noticed your walk. A few guests laughed nervously. Ethan smiled. Then I noticed your hair. Emma could hardly breathe. You knew? Not immediately. He shrugged. But before the ceremony was halfway over, he smiled. I was pretty sure. Emma stared at him in disbelief. Then Ethan's expression softened. The truth is, he glanced briefly toward the phone still in his hand. The person I was worried about losing wasn't Vanessa. The room became completely silent. Emma's heart pounded. Ethan looked at her. Only her. For weeks, while planning the wedding, he had looked forward to every conversation, every meeting, every laugh, and somewhere along the way, his feelings had quietly changed. He simply hadn't admitted it, not even to himself, until now. Then Ethan said something nobody expected, including Emma. If anyone leaves this church today, he gently reached for her hand. I'd rather it not be you. The entire church fell silent, and for the second time that day, Emma found herself completely speechless. The silence inside the church slowly faded. Guests began talking again. Some were still shocked. Others were trying to understand what had just happened. But Ethan wasn't paying attention to any of them. His eyes remained on Emma. Only Emma. She still looked terrified, as if she expected security to escort her out at any moment. Instead, Ethan squeezed her hand gently. You're shaking. Emma let out a nervous laugh. That's because my life is probably over. To her surprise, Ethan smiled. I don't think so. Before either of them could say anything else, Ethan's mother suddenly stepped forward. The entire room held its breath. Nobody knew how she would react. She looked at Emma for several seconds. Then, unexpectedly, she hugged her. Emma froze. Ethan's mother. The older woman shook her head. You saved my son from the most humiliating day of his life. Tears filled Emma's eyes. I didn't know what else to do. You did more than most people would have. For the first time that day, Emma felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. The crisis was over. Or so she thought. Then one of the family lawyers hurried toward them. He looked concerned. There's a small complication. Ethan raised an eyebrow. What now? The lawyer cleared his throat. Technically, the marriage is legal. The room became silent again. Emma nearly dropped her bouquet. What? The lawyer nodded. The license was signed. The witnesses signed. The officiant completed the ceremony. He adjusted his glasses. As far as the law is concerned, you are husband and wife. Emma's mouth fell open. This can't be happening. Several guests tried not to laugh. Even Ethan looked amused. Emma turned pale. Okay, fine. We can fix it. She looked at Ethan. We'll file for an annulment immediately." Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he seemed strangely thoughtful. "Ethan?" Still no answer. Finally, he looked at her. "What if I don't want one?" Emma blinked. The room froze. "Ethan," he smiled slightly. "I'm serious." Emma stared at him, completely speechless. A few hours later, after the guests had left and the reporters were gone, Emma sat alone in a private room at the church. Her head was spinning. The entire day felt unreal. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She looked up. Ethan stood in the doorway. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he walked inside. "I owe you an apology." Emma frowned. "For what?" "For making you think I wanted to marry Vanessa." She stared at him. Ethan laughed softly. "The truth is, I was already having doubts." Emma's heart skipped. He continued. "Every meeting I attended, I looked forward to seeing you." He smiled. "And somewhere along the way, I stopped looking forward to the wedding." Emma couldn't breathe. "I started looking forward to you." The room became quiet. Outside, the sun was beginning to set. And for the first time since the chaos began, neither of them wanted to leave. The room remained quiet. Outside, the sun was beginning to disappear behind the horizon. Inside, neither Ethan nor Emma seemed ready to leave. Emma finally broke the silence. "Do you realize how crazy this is?" Ethan smiled. "Which part?" She stared at him. "This morning, you were supposed to marry another woman." "Fair point. And now everyone thinks we're married." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "We are married." Emma groaned and covered her face. "Please don't remind me." That made Ethan laugh. A real laugh. The kind he hadn't had in months. For a moment, Emma simply watched him. Then she realized something. She liked seeing him smile. Far more than she should. Eventually, they left the church together. Outside, reporters were still gathered near the entrance. The moment cameras spotted them, flashes exploded everywhere. "Mr. Blackwell, who is the woman? Are you still legally married? Did the bride really run away?" Emma froze. Ethan immediately stepped closer. Without thinking, he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. The cameras went wild. But something surprising happened. For the first time all day, Emma didn't feel alone. Together, they made their way to the waiting car. As soon as the doors closed, both of them let out a breath. Then they looked at each other and started laughing. Not because anything was funny, but because the entire day felt completely unbelievable. Hours later, they arrived at Ethan's estate. Emma had visited before while planning the wedding, but this time felt different. Everything felt different. A staff member opened the front door, then stopped. His eyes widened. "Welcome home, sir." His gaze shifted to Emma, then a huge smile appeared on his face. "And welcome home, ma'am." Emma nearly choked. Ethan looked far too amused. As they entered the mansion, Emma turned toward him. "This is temporary." "Of course. We'll figure everything out." "Absolutely. We're not acting like a married couple." Ethan nodded seriously. "Not at all." Emma narrowed her eyes. "You seem very happy about this." "I am." That answer caught her completely off guard. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan's expression softened. "Emma," she looked up. "Today could have been the most humiliating day of my life." His voice was quiet now. But somehow, he smiled. It became the best. Emma felt her heart skip. And for the first time since the wedding chaos began, she allowed herself to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this unexpected marriage wasn't a mistake after all. 3 months later, the headlines had finally disappeared. The reporters had moved on, and the story that once shocked the country had become something entirely different. A love story. Emmy stood in the garden behind Ethan's estate, staring at the sunset. The last few months had felt like a dream. What began as a disaster had slowly turned into the happiest period of her life. The marriage that was supposed to be temporary never ended. The annulment papers were never filed. And somewhere between shared breakfasts, late-night conversations, and countless stolen smiles, Emma had completely fallen in love. The sound of footsteps behind her made her smile. She already knew who it was. Ethan. He stopped beside her. "You disappeared." Emma laughed softly. "I was enjoying the view." Ethan shook his head. "The view is standing next to me." Emma rolled her eyes. "That was terrible. I know. But it worked." She couldn't help laughing. For a moment, they stood quietly together. Then Ethan reached into his pocket. Emma frowned. "What is that?" Instead of answering, Ethan pulled out a small velvet box. Emma froze. Her heart immediately began pounding. "Ethan!" He smiled nervously, and that alone shocked her. This was a man who negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking. Yet somehow, asking this question made him nervous. Slowly, he opened the box. Inside was a beautiful diamond ring. Not a wedding ring, an engagement ring. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan." He took her hand. "The first time we got married wasn't exactly how I planned it." Emma laughed through her tears. "That's one way to describe it." A grin appeared on Ethan's face. Then his expression softened. "Emma Parker." His voice was quiet, sincere. "You walked into my life when everything was falling apart." He squeezed her hand gently. "You saved me from humiliation." Then he shook his head. "No." A smile appeared. "You saved me from the wrong future." Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks. Ethan continued. "You were never my second choice." His voice grew softer. "You were the woman I didn't realize I was waiting for." Emma could barely breathe. Then Ethan lowered himself onto one knee. And for the second time in her life, the entire world seemed to stop. "This time," he said, holding up the ring, "I want to do it properly." A tear slid down Emma's cheek. "Ethan," he smiled, "will you marry me?" Emma laughed through her tears. "You're already my husband. Humor me." She shook her head, smiling. Then she wrapped her arms around him. "Yes." Ethan laughed. "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes." "A real yes?" Emma kissed him. "I think that's a real yes." They both laughed, and as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger. Months later, family and friends gathered for a second wedding. Not because they needed another marriage, but because they wanted the celebration they never got the first time. This time, there were no runaway brides, no scandals, no surprises, only love. As Emma walked down the aisle, Ethan watched her with the same expression he had worn the day she unexpectedly appeared at the altar. Only now there was no confusion, no uncertainty, just certainty. Because the woman walking toward him wasn't pretending to be anyone else. She was exactly where she belonged, and so was he. As they exchanged vows, Ethan realized something. The greatest moments in life are often the ones you never plan for. The wrong bride had walked down the aisle that day. At least that's what everyone believed. But standing beside Emma, Ethan knew the truth. She had been the right bride all along. And together, they stepped into a future filled with love, laughter, and the kind of happy ending neither of them had expected. What a journey Ethan and Emma's story has been. A woman who stepped into a wedding dress to save a billionaire from heartbreak, never expecting she would become the bride he truly wanted all along. Sometimes life doesn't go according to plan. Sometimes the person we think we're supposed to be with isn't the person meant for us. And sometimes, the greatest love stories begin with the most unexpected second chances. If stories like this warm your heart, then I have something special for you. I recently released my very first ebook, a collection of 5 emotional billionaire love stories filled with romance, unforgettable characters, touching moments, and the happy endings we all love. If you enjoyed Ethan and Emma's story, you'll definitely enjoy the stories inside this collection. You can find the link to the ebook in the description below. And if this story made you smile, touched your heart, or kept you watching until the very end, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves beautiful love stories. Your support means more than you know, and it helps me continue creating more stories for amazing viewers like you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for spending your time with me, and thank you for being part of this storytelling family. I'll see you in the next story.